JM, one college quarterback in 2024 really stood out amongst the rest, and that was Cam Ward. He had the best season. He showed the most talent. He showed like he was the most NFL-ready quarterback, and I think as we've gone through this process, Cam Ward is easily the number one quarterback. I think at this point, basically a lock to be the number one overall pick.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you see the Titans, they haven't made a single move to bring another quarterback in that room. You thought maybe Russell Wilson was in play. Aaron Rodgers, not so much. Kirk Cousins, that situation's gone a little differently. He's still on the Falcons roster, and it seems like he's going to stay. Jameis Winston went to the Giants as well. So, the opportunity there for a veteran quarterback, I could still maybe see a potential reunion with Marcus Mariota, but there's no actual quarterback who's getting there at this point who you see as, oh, that's obviously going to be the starter, and they're not looking to take a rookie quarterback. The plan is clearly Cam Ward.
And I think it stinks to have the top overall pick in this draft because none of these guys are worthy of the number one overall pick. It's not the greatest draft, especially towards the top, but especially the quarterbacks. It's not the draft to have 3 or 4 wins and be in desperate need of a quarterback like the Giants, the Titans, the Browns are. Now, the Titans are in a situation, and you can make the argument for the Browns and I think lesser the Giants. Are you ever going to be in this spot again? Are you ever going to be in the spot of, well, we have the top pick, we have the second pick, there are quarterbacks available. How much do you have to like these guys to pull the trigger and take them?
Oh, you got to love them. I mean, with the Titans, it's an interesting perspective you can have on it because, for one, like you said, you could be like, wow, what a poor year to have the number one pick because Cam Ward, a lot of scouts say that he wouldn't be the number one pick in last year's draft. He wouldn't even be one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks.
They think he'd be around 4 last
taken off
year.
Right behind or right next to J.J. McCarthy. That makes sense. But at the same time, what you could be thinking if you're the Titans is to say, well, it's a very it's weak with quarterbacks, and maybe the only guy worth drafting in the first round is Cam Ward. So you could look at it in that positive light and say we're getting the one guy that is draftable out of these quarterbacks with a premier pick. But at the same time, I'm almost surprised. I'm sure the Titans have dabbled with this a little bit. Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, those are 2 guys who, you talk about last year's draft, they would have been easily the first non-quarterbacks taken off of the board. You think, and even over Travis Hunter would have gone over Marvin Harrison last year, 100%.
You think so?
Yep, 100%. Travis Hunter would have. And if we're discussing Abdul Carter over Travis Hunter, then I think he would have gone over Marv as well. So I think either one of these guys would have been over Marvin Harrison. They would have been the first non-quarterback taken off the board. Joe Alt, yep. They all
I don't know. I think the Chargers still go Alt. I think the Chargers still take Alt.
I just think as forget to specific team needs and everything like that. Big board, right?
Okay.
When they're the number one guys, non-quarterbacks in last year's class. Why not? I'm sure the Titans have thought about entertaining maybe a bidding war for the first pick to draft one of those guys. Maybe they heard some buzz. They heard about Cleveland when that Myles Garrett contract situation was going sour for a while. They heard they wanted Carter. They heard teams were interested in Travis Hunter. Who knows what the Giants were doing? The Patriots are looking for a non-quarterback, obviously. So I wonder what the market was like for that.
The problem is nobody wants to go up. No. Teams just want to go down. Most of these teams want to go down if they can. Now, of course, if you could get your hands on one of those premier players like a Carter, like a Hunter, you do so. But for the quarterbacks, I don't think there's a ton of motivation. The only team that I think we had even heard some buzz about going up to one was the Giants before they made these signings at quarterback. I don't think that's as likely now. And Joe Shane even talked about it today, saying how he's not forcing himself into a quarterback. He didn't want to have to be forced into a quarterback. They're in a position here where they could take best player available. And when you look at big boards, JM, these guys are not best player available. Shedeur Sanders is not best player available. He's more like anywhere from the 20 to the 40 rank. Jackson Dart's going to be a first-round pick, maybe a top 10 pick. He might not even be worthy of a first-round pick. Now, I would take him in the first round. I would take that flyer on him. And let's skip over Shedeur to go to Jackson for a second, because I've read a couple of things that I don't like the past couple of days now. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's a pro quarterback. He didn't play in a pro-style offense. I think this guy has to sit down for a few years with the right quarterback, with the right coach, and then it may work out.
Right. Well, it's very interesting because you sort of get a Zach Wilson vibe from Jackson Dart.
Do you?
even with like the looks, the headband, the whole thing, like for some reason I'm getting a lot of Zach Wilson vibes out of him because Zach Wilson had a similar scouting report. And forget how Zach Wilson's pro career has turned out to be, because we know a lot of that had to do with where he ended up going. And I don't think if Zach Wilson went to any other scenario, he would have really done anything anyways, but we never know, right? So just as a prospect, that's how we look at these guys, right? Every time you hear a pro comparison for a prospect, anything like that, they're not saying they're going to be that guy. They're just comparing physical traits, build, play style, things like that. So Jackson Dart, pretty decently sized, nothing crazy, decently sized quarterback. What is he, about 6'2", 215,
6'2", 225.
There you go. Pretty good on his feet, has a very nice, accurate arm, pretty live arm. But, is there going to be consistent production in the NFL? You have a bit of a question mark around that decision making. Has he really played in a pro-style offense like you're talking about? Has he played up to his competition? That we're not so sure of. So I agree. I think Dart, all these guys, really, for the most part, it's the nature of the class. They need some time. They can't just be a Jaden Daniels or a CJ Stroud. Cam Ward, I think, is the only guy that has a chance to do that, where you could start him on day one and he can make an impact for your football team.
I don't want to do that. I definitely don't want to do that with Dart or Sanders 100%. I think ideally they'd sit probably a full season.
Yeah.
Especially with Dart. I mean, maybe 2 seasons with Dart.
Yeah. I want to go back to, you brought up the Giants. And, I don't think people have talked about it enough now when we look at what the Giants have done the past couple of weeks. And now you start to see maybe how some teams are thinking. The Giants have the most important pick in this draft. They could literally shake up the landscape of this entire first round depending on what they do with their first pick. They go quarterback, all of a sudden you have Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, whoever's on the board, I'm going to guess it's Hunter, falling into the lap of the Patriots. And now you're talking about Drake May potentially getting Travis Hunter as the blinds go up here in the NSU Windows Studios.
At least it's cloudy out now, so the glare won't be bad.
So there's no glare. That's
great. We flipped ourselves, by the way, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah,
we flipped ourselves.
A little bit of a new look here. So you have Travis Hunter falling into the lap of the New England Patriots, or on the flip side, you take Travis Hunter if you're the Giants, or you take Abdul Carter, and now the slide begins. The slide begins for Sanders, and how far can he go? Will he probably go to the Jets pick? Yes. I honestly don't think the Jets would take him.
I don't think
the Jets
so
are set on not taking a quarterback in this draft class.
I think they're okay with it. I don't want to say that in the draft class. I think in the first round, yes. I think if there's a guy the Jets like, there are a couple of flyers. Kyle McCord, the kid from Louisville. There's a couple of kids that are probably worth a second or third round pick. Hey, you need a quarterback. You need a younger guy. Let's get him in the room. Right. But, yeah, in the first round, I don't think the Jets are in on any of these guys. No. There's been a lot of buzz with Dart. Yep. If they took Dart at 7, I don't even want to know what your reaction would be.
I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. Just everything. We've seen the way this front office has moved so far, right? They said it was a quiet offseason. They don't want to win the offseason. It seems like they really like Fields. You still have Tyrod. You have Jordan Travis coming off of injury, being a third-string player, right? That could turn into being maybe a solid backup, or who knows what he could turn into. So I don't really see them entertaining taking a quarterback here. Yes, maybe a little later on in the draft if they want to. That, I don't even know if it's that realistic either. But no, I think Sanders starts sliding if he goes past the Giants pick. And now you're talking about who's going to come up and get him. I don't know if he'll end up sliding all the way into the lap of a team that really needs him.
Would the Saints
like
take
the
him?
Saints? Yeah, I don't know if I see that happening. I think somebody would maybe jump up and be like, all right, he's down to 9, he's down to 10 now. Let's go get this kid.
I don't know. If Dart is selected in the top 10 by any of these teams, awful. I think that is a Daniel Jones-esque pick. Yep. That is Daniel Jones at 6 to the Giants pick.
But what is the appeal there? I don't like. I know Dart has talent. I'm not saying he's trash or anything like that. But we've seen 9 quarterbacks taken in the first round in the last 2 years, right? So there's not a lot of teams out there actually that do not have any veteran starter who's decent or a young quarterback with potential on their roster right now. So who would even be willing to take a Jackson Dart in the top 10 there.
In the top 10, I couldn't tell you. Unless it was the Jets, unless these reports are true. Could the Saints be interested? Do the Saints want to try and get their next quarterback in there? Do you think the Raiders know they traded for Geno? They didn't do a new contract with Geno yet, but I don't think they would want to do that.
No,
they probably want to
so
extend
either.
Geno.
I mean, they were a team that made a lot of sense earlier in the offseason about
But if they don't
Sanders.
have a contract with Geno Smith by the time the draft begins, what is stopping them at 6 if he's falling? We know that's been a destination that Dion wants Shedeur to go to. That's a destination that Shedeur probably wants to be at. What stops them from saying, hey, we have a year of Geno? And
with all the dysfunction that they've had, what message are you sending to your fan base by saying, hey, we traded for a bridge quarterback? When you could have just gone after Russell Wilson, when you could have brought in Jameis Winston, because to me, what's the difference between a Geno Smith and a Jameis Winston if you're just going to start the guy for 1 year with a team that doesn't really have much of a chance to compete anyways? Obviously, Geno's a better quarterback, but you're not going to go to the playoffs with Geno.
Why am I blanking? Who they hired? Carroll. Yes. I'm like, who the hell did the Raiders hire? Yeah. I think a team. I'll throw a couple of names out here for a guy like Dart in the first round. I think the Chargers would make a lot of sense at 22. I don't think. I don't
Can you
dislike.
Explain that.
Who did I say?
The Chargers?
I meant the Rams. I'm very sorry.
Okay.
I read the Chargers here,
Okay.
and the Rams
Mr.
are right
Herbert
here.
Fan. What the hell are you talking about?
The Rams would make a lot of sense. You have Stafford. He's already flirted with it, leaving, flirted with retirement. Get him in a room with Sean McVay and see what happens.
I honestly, Pittsburgh
would make sense.
Is a potential, but did they, are they saying, hey, we learned our lesson with Kenny Pickett? We're not going to take a quarterback in a weak class in the mid-20s.
That's falling.
In the first round that's falling?
Apparently they're in love with Jalen Milroe. Everything you read, they like Milroe.
Well, they better really have good developmental staff because Jalen Milroe could be really bad or really good depending on who's coaching him and what situation he's in.
He's going to be sitting next to 8. He's sitting next to Mr. Aaron Rodgers over there.
Aren't you just so tired of those headlines?
Because
he's having a catch with DK Metcalf.
Because at this point, it's so obvious. He's either retiring or playing for the Steelers. So why don't you just sign with the Steelers? Yeah. It's the stupidest thing in the world. There's no other teams.
Yeah. And what's their plan? If they don't get him, then what are they going to do?
Right. They're just destined for each other. Is this just now him threatening retirement and saying, hey, if you don't sign me, I'm going to retire if you don't give me exactly how much I want?
I guess so. I guess that's his negotiation tactic. He's
not
already making enough money.
He's already making what, $40 million from the Jets just this season?
Like that, yeah.
It's a joke.
It is.
What would you say a pro comp for Shedeur Sanders is? Like right now, pro comp.
Oh, putting me on the spot here.
Yeah, putting you on the spot. He's 6'2", 212. He's not that athletic.
I was going to say like a Tua doesn't. I don't hate that. Because the Sanders, the big pro of his game is he's very accurate. He doesn't have any arm talent that really wows you. He's not much of a creator with his legs. Average athlete. To me, he's like a righty Tua.
You know who you just named? You just named Dak Prescott. At his best, I think he could beat Dak.
Dak's a better athlete than...
You think Dak's better athlete?
Yeah.
I think
Dak's a bit of a better creator than Shedeur is.
Listen, I think that's peak. I think that's absolute peak.
I'd hope so. Shedeur, if he turns out to be Dak Prescott, it's pretty damn good for what we think he's going to be.
But I think his athleticism, Shedeur's, is slightly underrated. I do. I think he is a little bit mobile. I think he can move. And for a while, I think we underrated Dak's ability to move in the pocket and create some space on his own. And they don't have crazy arm strength. They both don't. Dak's been better, but they don't have crazy arm strength. And they're both very accurate. Yeah. I think Dak is a good comp.
What's Shedeur's build?
He's 6'2", 212.
And Tua Tagovailoa as a draft prospect was, it says 6 foot. Wikipedia says 6'1". I'm going to round up 6'1", 217.
So the same build. They're the same build.
Yeah, similar
Dak's
build.
a bigger guy, although I heard Dak lost a ton of weight.
Yeah, I saw they lost like 30 pounds.
Yeah, he lost 30
something like
pounds. What did he hurt again? Why was I blanking on his injury before?
that. I can't even keep track of his injuries anymore.
It wasn't
Thumb
the ACL.
was 2 years ago, right? Or was that this year?
I thought that was this year.
That
'Cause
was
I thought
this
the ACL was 2 years ago.
Thumb was this year.
Okay. Yes, it was. Because he got hit.
It's going to be interesting to see. I really don't think that more than 2 quarterbacks should go in the first round of this draft, though.
No, but there will. 3 will go. 3 go.
3 maximum. But it really shouldn't be more than 2. If this wasn't a quarterback-led league, which it obviously is, then it should just be 2, maybe even 1. I mean, but 2. I think Shedeur, he's a top 30 prospect in this class.
I don't get the sense the Giants are taking him. So what team takes him? Shedeur.
I mean, yeah, I guess it would be very Raiders for them to just be like, all right, well,
We're gonna take
let's take him. But then again, it's a new regime. Do they want to just be, okay, I guess we're going to scrap the game plan here and get Shedeur? Or is this the say a prayer game plan? Are they praying that Shedeur falls to them? Have they been on the phones trying to trade up? Who knows what's going on? So, yeah, they make a ton of sense. To me, even though it's a lacking quarterback class, there's one team in this draft where if he's on the board, if he falls to you, no questions asked, you have to take him. It's the Saints.
Okay.
Because their future to me is so bleak. That would be something in the right direction.
If you can get a guy that's been talked about as a top 3, top 5 pick that falls to 9, and you trust your coaching and developmental staff there, they have Kellen Moore there now.
Yep. And that's not a bad value.
No, it's not. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. It's Giants or Saints if nobody's trading up in the top 10. If not, it could be a free fall, and it could be a while before somebody goes up and gets him. More on the NFL draft as we get closer, less than a month away. We're super pumped, and more on these top teams and where the quarterbacks will go.